The Adventure Series by Enid Blyton. The Mountain of Adventure. Four children were singing at the tops of their voices in a car that was going up a steep mountainside road. A parrot was also joining in, very much out of tune, cocking up her crest in excitement. The man at the wheel turned round with a grin. "I say, I can't even hear the car hooter. What's the matter with you all?" Philip, Jack, Dinah and Lucy Ann stopped singing and shouted answers at him.
"It's the beginning of the holes, and we're going to have a donkey each to ride in the mountains. Up goes the weasel."
That was Kiki the parrot, of course, joining in.
"We've got 8 weeks of fun together. And you'll be with us, Bill, as well as Mother. Mother, aren't you excited too?"
Mrs. Mannering smiled at Philip.
"Yes, but I hope you're not going to be as noisy as this all the time. Bill, you'll have to protect me from this rowdy crowd of children."
Philip and Dinah were Mrs. Mannering's children, and Jack and Lucy Ann, who had no parents, lived with her in the holidays and loved her as if she were their own mother. Bill Cunningham was their very good friend and had had some hair-raising adventures with them. He had come with them on these holidays to keep them out of any more adventures, or so he said. Mrs. Mannering vowed she was not going to let them out of her sight for 8 weeks unless Bill was with them. Then they couldn't possibly disappear or fall into some dreadful new adventure.
"They ought to be safe, tucked away in the Welsh mountains with both you and me, Bill, to look after them,"
said Mrs. Mannering. Mr. Mannering had been dead for many years, and Mrs. Mannering often found it difficult to cope with so many lively children at once, now that they were growing older. Philip loved any animal, bird, or insect. His sister Dinah didn't share this love at all, and disliked most wild animals, and hated quite a number of harmless insects, though she was certainly better than she used to be. She was a hot-tempered girl, as ready to use her fists as Philip, and they had many a battle, much to gentle Lucy Ann's dismay. Lucy Ann and Jack were brother and sister too. Kiki the parrot was Jack's beloved pet, usually to be found on his shoulder. When they arrived at the farmhouse, the children tumbled out of the car. Bill got out and stretched his legs. He helped Mrs. Mannering out, and they all looked round. A plump, red-faced woman came hurrying out, a welcoming smile on her face. She called behind her to someone in the house.
"Evans? Evans, they have come, look you, they've come."
"Ah, Mrs. Evans," said Bill, and shook hands with her. Mrs. Mannering did the same. A small man came running out of the house and came up to them too.
"This is Evans, my husband,"
said the plump woman.
"We hope you will be very happy with this, whatever."
This was said in a pleasant sing-song voice that the children liked very much. Everybody shook hands solemnly with Mrs. Evans and her husband, and Kiki held out a claw as well. They all followed Evans. He led them to the farmhouse, and when the door was flung open, what a welcome sight met the children's eyes. A long, sturdy kitchen table was covered with a snow-white cloth, and on it was set the finest meal the children had ever seen in their lives. A great ham sat ready to be carved. A big tongue garnished round with bright green parsley sat by its side. An enormous salad with hard-boiled eggs sprinkled generously all over it was in the middle of the table. 2 cold roast chickens were on the table too, with little curly bits of cold bacon set around. The children's eyes nearly fell out of their heads. What a feast! And the scones and cakes, the jams and the pure yellow honey, the jugs of creamy milk.
"I say, are you having a party or something?"
asked Jack in awe.
"A party? Oh, no, it is high tea for you, look you,"
said Mrs. Evans.
"We cannot do dinners for you at night. We are busy people. You shall have what we have, and that is all. Here is high tea for you today, and when you have washed it is ready."
That first meal in the Welsh farmhouse was a very happy one. Mrs. Evans was excited to have visitors, and Evans, her husband, beamed all round as he carved great slices of ham, tongue, and chicken. There were a lot of look-yous and whatefers, and Kiki was especially interested in the up-and-down song-like way the two Welsh folk talked.
"Wipe your feet, whatever,"
she said to Mrs. Evans suddenly. Mrs. Evans looked surprised. She hadn't heard the parrot speak before.
"Shut the door, look you!"
commanded Kiki, raising her crest. The children squealed with laughter. At last, nobody could eat any more. They sat back from the table, looking out of the wide, low windows and the big open door. What a view! Great mountains reared up their heads in the evening light. Deep shadows lay across the valley, but the mountains still caught the sunlight and gleamed enchantingly. It was all so different from the country round their home, and the children felt that they could never look long enough on the mountain tops and the shadowed valleys below. Lucy Ann gave an enormous yawn and sank down into a big chair. Mrs. Mannering looked at her, and then at the grandfather clock ticking in a corner.
"Go to bed, all of you,"
she said.
"We're all tired. Yes, I know it's early, Philip, you don't need to tell me that. But we've had a long day, and this mountain air is very strong. We shall all sleep like tops tonight."
The next day, the children awoke early. They all went downstairs just as Mrs. Evans was setting the last touches to the breakfast table. It was loaded almost as much as the supper table the night before.
"Mrs. Evans, do you know where the donkeys are that we arranged to have for riding in the mountains?"
asked Philip.
"They're being brought here today, look you,"
said Mrs. Evans. The children waited expectantly for the donkeys all the morning, not liking to go for a walk in case they missed the donkeys' arrival. Lucy Ann saw them first. She gave a yell that startled everybody. Even Kiki jumped.
"The donkeys!"
cried Lucy Ann.
"There they come! Look, up the mountain path!"
Soon all 4 children were tearing down the path to the donkeys. They were strong, sturdy little creatures with big, bright eyes and long tails that whisked the flies away. They were all grey, and their long ears twitched to and fro as they came steadily up the steep path. The man who owned them was called David, an elderly man with untidy hair and a beard. He had bright blue eyes, but he looked timid and shy, as if the world had not been kind to him. He smiled faintly at the lively children.
"Can we ride the donkeys now?"
asked Philip.
"We know how to ride. Come on, everybody."
The donkeys ambled up the steep path with the children, refusing to trot now that they had heavy weights on their backs.
"Hello, here we are,"
cried Jack, ambling up to Mrs. Mannering and Bill.
"We badly want to go off on the donkeys into the mountains, Mother,"
said Philip coaxingly.
"Can we? With you and Bill, of course. To stay a few nights, I mean. Jack and I think there should be a fine lot of rare birds over there in those lonely mountains, and there will be lots of animals, too." "It would be rather fun,"
said his mother.
"I haven't camped out for ages, and in this weather it would be lovely. What do you say, Bill?"
"I say yes," said Bill, who loved outdoor life and was an old hand at camping. "Do you good, Ally. We could take a couple of extra donkeys to carry the things we want."
"Oh, Bill, can we really go?"
said Lucy Ann, overjoyed, and Dinah danced round him too. To go off on donkeys into the mountains and take tents and food, what could be more fun?
"It will be an adventure,"
said Dinah.
"Not one of our usual ones, of course, but a really nice one. You'll like that, Lucy Ann, won't you?" "Oh, yes,"
said Lucy Ann, who never really enjoyed a proper adventure whilst it was happening.
"I'd like that kind of adventure." "Evans, where is a nice place to go?"
asked Jack, turning to him. Evans considered. He spoke to David in Welsh. "He says the Vale of Butterflies is a good place," said Evans. "It is full of birds as well as butterflies."
"Super,"
said Philip.
"Absolutely wizard. We'll go there. Is it far?"
2 days on donkeys," said Evans. "We shall want a guide," said Bill, and asked David if he would take the job. David agreed. The children were very excited. They ran round the donkeys, patted them, rubbed their long noses, and sat on their broad backs. They were all going on a mountain adventure. But then something unexpected happened, something that quite upset their lovely plans. It happened when Mrs. Mannering went with Mrs. Evans to the big barn. The door suddenly blew shut and caught her hand in it, trapping it tightly. Mrs. Mannering screamed. Mrs. Evans ran to open the door, but poor Mrs. Mannering's hand was badly bruised and crushed. Bill was very concerned. "I must take you down to the doctor," he said. I'll get the car." Looking rather white, Mrs. Mannering was driven off by Bill down the steep mountain road to the town that lay some way off in the next valley. It was about 15 miles, and soon Mrs. Mannering was in hospital, having her hand x-rayed and bound up. The children were very upset.
"Poor mother,"
said Philip.
"It must have hurt dreadfully when her hand got caught in that heavy door."
Mrs. Mannering arrived back in Bill's car that evening, just before high tea. She looked better and made light of her hand. "We've had it x-rayed," said Bill. "She's broken a tiny bone, just here," and he showed them where on the back of his hand. "It's got to be bandaged and kept at rest. I'm to take her down to have it seen again in 3 days' time."
"I'm so sorry, dears,"
said Mrs. Mannering.
"And Bill, you don't need to take me down, you know. I'm quite able to drive myself down, even with an injured hand. Take the children on their trip tomorrow. I can't bear to have them disappointed."
"What? And leave you like this?" said Bill. "Don't be silly, Ally. I shall take you down myself in the car on Friday. The children can go with David, if he'll take them on by himself. It's a perfectly ordinary trip, and they'll be back in a few days' time. They can all ride their donkeys as easily as David, and probably they'll enjoy a trip without us." So it was settled that the 4 children should go by themselves on the donkeys with their guide David, taking with them tents, bedding, and food. All the children were awake very early the next day. It was a really perfect day. The mountains towered up into the fresh morning sky, as beautiful as ever. At last, everyone and everything was ready. It had been explained to David that Bill and Mrs. Mannering could not come. David did not seem too pleased to think he was to go alone with the children. He looked rather alarmed, Bill thought. Poor fellow. Bill wished it was Effens who was going with the children, not David. Still, the children were used to camping out, and could be trusted to be sensible.
"Goodbye,"
called everyone.
"See you in a few days' time. Take care of your hand, Mother. Now we're off to the Vale of Butterflies. Goodbye, everyone."
It was glorious riding there, so high, looking down on the valley far below. It was partly in the sun and partly in the shadow, for the sun was not yet high. Swallows flew round them, catching flies, their steel-blue wings gleaming in the sun. Kiki watched them out of her sharp eyes. She'd often tried fly-catching herself, but she knew she was not good at it. Anyway, flies didn't taste as good as fruit. They ambled on until everyone felt hungry and thirsty. They came to a copse of birch trees with a small stream nearby.
"Let's picnic here,"
said Philip, sliding off his donkey.
"in the shade of those trees. I'm absolutely cooked with the sun."
David saw to the donkeys, taking them to the stream for water. He then let them wander free, for they came most obediently at his call, and could be trusted not to go too far away. They went to the shade of the trees and stood there, swishing their long grey tails, enjoying the rest. There was a lovely lunch. The children had to call David to share it because he suddenly seemed shy. He came and sat down a little way away from them.
"No, David, come here with us,"
called Jack, patting the ground.
"We want to learn Welsh. Come and talk to us."
But the old Welshman was very shy, and it was as much as the children could do to persuade him to eat his share of the lunch. It was such a good lunch, too. There were 5 different kinds of sandwiches, fresh lettuce wrapped in a damp cloth, hard-boiled eggs to nibble, and great slices of jam tart. Washed down with cold lemonade, it was the finest lunch anyone could wish. Soon they were all on their donkeys again, jogging along round the mountainside, enjoying the wind and the sun, gazing on the different vistas that opened up before them round every bend of the track. New mountains reared up far-away heads, new skylines appeared. For long stretches the children said nothing at all to one another, but simply drank in the beauty around them, and the sun and wind. They travelled until 6 o'clock, having decided to keep to the high tea that Mrs. Evans had at the farm. Jack spoke to David when 6 o'clock came.
"David, we stop at 6:30. Do you know a good place to camp for the night near here?"
David did not understand, and Jack repeated it more slowly. David smiled and nodded. "Yes, yes." This meant yes, and Jack looked as David pointed to a wooded spot some way ahead. David said something else in Welsh, and Jack caught a few words here and there which he understood. One was water, the other was trees.
David says there's a good place to camp and a little way off.
Jack shouted back to the others.
There's water there, and trees. Gosh, however do you understand him? Said
Philip in admiration.
Jolly clever of you, Jack.
Jack grinned all over his freckled face.
Oh, I just caught the words water and trees, that's all. Come on, let's get there in time to watch the sun sink over the mountains. I'd like to have a sunset with my sandwiches.
Philip laughed. They all ambled on towards the spot pointed out by David. It was a little further than they thought, but when they got there, they all agreed it was just the right place to camp for the night. A spring gushed out beside the small wooded patch, as cold as ice. The trees sheltered the campers from the night wind, which could be very chilly at times. The donkeys were to be tied to trees so that they would not wander in the night. Everything was perfect. The tents were soon put up side by side. David did not want to sleep in one. He preferred to sleep outside. He'd never slept in a tent, and he thought they were quite unnecessary.
Well, I'd just as soon he slept outside,
said Jack to Philip.
I don't believe there'd be room for one more in here. Do you?
The sun had now disappeared completely. It had gone behind the mountains in a perfect blaze of colour, and all the summits had gleamed for a while, and then darkness had crept up to the very tops, leaving only a clear sky beyond. Stars twinkled in the sky, looking very big and bright. There was no sound at all, except the trickle of the spring, and the sound of the wind in the trees. Soon all the weary adventurers were fast asleep. Lucy Ann awoke first. She was cold. She snuggled down into her sleeping bag, and then opened her eyes. She stared out of the open tent flap, expecting to see the green mountainside and the distant mountains towering up into the sky. But they weren't there. Instead, a white mist swirled past the tent flap, some of it putting thin, cold fingers into the tent itself. There was nothing to see at all except this mist. The mountains had gone. The trees by the camp were blotted out. Even the donkeys couldn't be seen. They decided to have breakfast in one of the tents because the mist made everything damp and chilly. It was not so cheerful a meal as usual. The children missed the magnificent view they'd been used to, and were afraid perhaps David wouldn't take them on their way that day. But the mist cleared a little in an hour's time, and David seemed quite willing to go. They loaded up the donkeys, mounted, and set off down the track. They could see some way ahead of them now, for the sun was rising higher and trying to dissolve the mist with its heat.
It'll be all right,
said Jack.
I almost caught sight of the sun then.
But then the mist came down again, and it was only just possible to see the donkey in front.
I feel as if I ought to hold your donkey's tail in case you disappear in the mist,
shouted Jack to Dinah.
You know, like elephants do in circuses when they come into the ring, all holding on to one another's tails.
The mist thickened even more, and the little company stopped to discuss what to do. It was difficult to get anything intelligible out of David, who seemed suddenly to have forgotten any English words he knew. Jack flapped his arms, raised his eyebrows, and pointed in front of him, meaning to ask if they were near the Butterfly Valley. David understood, but he hesitated.
I hope he hasn't lost the way, said
Jack to Philip.
He seemed sure enough of the direction yesterday. Now he doesn't seem very certain. Blow. Well, we can't stop here, said
Dinah, shivering in the clammy mist.
There's no shelter and it's jolly cold. Over the sun again. Ride on, said Jack to David. It's the only thing to do till we find some kind of shelter. It's too cold to hang about till the mist has gone. If we go the wrong way, we can turn back and go right when the mist goes. They ambled on, nose to tail, pulling their jerseys close, glad of their coats too. Jack began to look rather worried. What's up? Said Philip, seeing Jack's serious face. We've left the track, said Jack. Haven't you noticed? We followed some kind of track up till an hour or two back, but now I'm pretty certain we've lost it. Goodness knows where David's heading for. I doubt if he's even noticed we're not on any track at all.
Philip whistled.
Phew. Well, he's our guide,
he added after a pause.
We'll have to trust him. He knows these mountains better than we do.
That night they set up their camp again, feeling rather disappointed. They had so hoped to come to the place they wanted that night, and set up camp properly for a few days to revel in hordes of common and uncommon butterflies. Now they would have to ride on still further, and goodness knew if they'd ever find it. They crawled into their sleeping bags and called good night, just as the stars gleamed out. David was sleeping as usual outside. That night there was a snuffling around the camp. Lucy Ann awoke suddenly and heard it. She went right down to the bottom of her sleeping bag, frightened. What could it be? Then she heard a howl. The boys heard it too and awoke. David outside was awake, having heard both the noises. He was shivering with fright, all kinds of fears coming into his mind at once. The moon was up, and everywhere was silvery bright. David sat up and looked down the hill. What he saw made his hair rise straight up on his head. Wolves! A pack of wolves! Another howl came, half a howl, half a bark, a horrible noise. David shot into the boys' tent and gave them a terrible start. He stammered something in Welsh, and then in English. "Wolves!"
Don't be silly,
said Jack at once, seeing that the man was badly scared.
You've had a bad dream.
David dragged him to the tent opening and pointed with a trembling finger to where the pack of snuffling animals stood, not far from the donkeys. The boys stared as if they could not believe their eyes. They certainly looked like wolves. Jack felt a cold shiver down his back. The only person who was not in the least scared was Kiki. She too had caught sight of the wolves. She sailed out of the tent at top speed to go and investigate. Anything unusual always interested Kiki. She flew above the animals, whose eyes gleamed green as they turned at her coming.
Wipe your feet!
Screamed Kiki, and made a noise like a mowing machine cutting long grass. It sounded really terrible in the still night air of the mountainside. The wolves started in fright. Then with one accord they all galloped away down the hillside into the night. Kiki shouted rude remarks after them.
They've gone,
said Jack.
Gosh, were they real? I can't understand it.
Daylight was almost on the mountain. The boys were looking out of their tent, down the hillside to watch. There was no sign of any wolf now. Suddenly, something happened. David, who was taking the donkeys in a line to the stream, gave a terrified yell and fell to the ground, covering his face. The boys, holding their breath, thought they saw something moving in the bushes, but they couldn't see what. David gave another yell and got to his feet. He mounted a donkey and rode at top speed up to the tent. "Come!" he cried in Welsh, and then in English, "Black! Black! Black!" The boys had no idea at all what he meant. They stared at him in amazement, thinking he must have gone mad. He made a violent gesture to them, pointed to the following donkeys as if to tell the boys to mount and follow him, and then galloped off at breakneck speed. They heard the hooves of his donkey echoing on the mountainside for some time. The other donkeys looked doubtfully at one another, and then, to the boys' dismay, trotted after David.
Hey! Come back, David!
Yelled Jack, scrambling out of the tent.
Hey! Hey!
One donkey turned and made as if to come back, but he was pushed on by the others behind. In a trice they had all disappeared, and the sound of their hooves grew fainter and fainter as they galloped away after David and his mount. The two boys sat down suddenly. They felt faint. Jack turned pale. He looked at Philip and bit his lip. Now they were in a terrible fix. They said nothing for a moment or two, and then the girls' two scared faces looked out from their tent.
What's happened? What's all the yelling? Was that David galloping away? We didn't dare to look. Yes, it was David, running away from us, and all the donkeys have gone after him,
said Philip bitterly.
We're in a pretty fix now.
It wasn't long before Dinah suggested having something to eat. They sat there, eating by the tents, occasionally glancing up at the mountain that towered up so steeply above them. It had no gentle slope up to the summit, as most of the mountains around had, but was steep and forbidding.
"I don't like this mountain,"
said Lucy-Anne.
"What are we going to do today?"
asked Jack, when they'd finished their meal.
"I suppose we must stay here till Bill comes to find us. We can't try to walk back home because, for one thing, we don't know the way, and for another, we'd never be able to carry enough food to get there without starving." "We'd better stay here,"
said Philip at once.
"It's 10 chances to 1 David will know his way back here all right, and can bring Bill and the donkeys. Whereas, if we start moving about, they'll never find us." "Yes, it does seem the most sensible thing to do,"
said Jack.
"We've got our camp here, tents set up and everything, so we might as well make the best of it and enjoy the camping."
They were just about to get up and clear away the picnic things when something curious happened that froze them to the ground. First of all, there was a grumbling, rumbling noise that seemed to come from the heart of the mountain itself, and then the ground shook a little. The 4 children distinctly felt it quivering beneath them, and they clutched at one another in alarm. Kiki flew straight up into the air, screaming. Eventually, there were no more rumblings, and the earth beneath them stayed still.
"What in the world was that?"
said Philip at last. Nobody knew. They got up, cleared away the meal, and went to splash in the little stream. The wind suddenly began to blow rather chilly, and looking up, the children saw that big clouds were coming up from the southwest.
"Looks like rain,"
said Jack.
"I hope the wind doesn't get up much more, or it'll blow our tents away." "Well,"
said Philip,
"if you really think the tents might blow away, Jack, we'd better find a better place to camp than this. Somewhere not too far, though, because we don't want to miss seeing Bill and David when they come for us. A copse of trees or a cave, or somewhere like that, right out of the wind." "Let's look now,"
said Dinah, pulling on her coat. It was extraordinary how cold it got as soon as the sun went in and the wind blew up the mountains. They hunted about for some kind of rocky shelter or cave, but there seemed none to be found. The mountain was so steep that it really was difficult to climb, and Lucy-Anne was afraid of slipping and falling. At last they found a long, low cave, its roof made out of another overhanging rock, its opening fringed with ferns of all kinds.
"This would do awfully well for us,"
said Jack, going down on hands and knees and looking in.
"We could light a fire on the rock outside and feel quite safe tonight."
They all sat down on the rock, wishing the sun would come out. Kiki sat on Jack's shoulder, looking miserable. But suddenly she rose up into the air and screeched loudly. What was the matter?
"Is it the wolves again?"
asked Lucy-Anne in alarm. They listened. They could hear a noise of some animal or animals down below in the thick bushes, under the birch trees. "Hee-haw! Hee-haw! Hee-haw!"
"Goodness, it's a donkey!"
cried Jack and scrambled down to see.
"Have they come back? Is David with them?"
They soon found what they were looking for. One of the donkeys was in the bushes.
"You've come back to us,"
said Philip.
"Well, we're very glad to see you, boy."
The day soon went, and the sun sank behind the mountains in a blaze of crimson. As soon as darkness fell on the mountainside, the children retired into the cave. The thought of wolves kept coming into their minds, and David's scream of terror when he'd seen something in the bushes. Black, black, black. What could he have seen? When the morning came, the donkey awoke the children by giving a mighty sneeze. They woke with a jump, wondering what it was. They had a meal. Lucy-Anne volunteered to go down to the stream again and wash the dishes, whilst the others looked at the map, trying to find out exactly where they were. She went off to the stream, humming. She knelt down by the water, scouring a dish, when a sound made her look up. She'd heard something in the tree above, just by the water. There was a big, leafy tree there, growing almost out of the stream. Lucy-Anne, thinking there must be a bird in the tree, peered up into the branches. She got a terrible shock. Looking down at her was a face, and it was black. The little girl sat there, petrified, the dish in her hand, unable to move or speak. The branches moved, and she saw that the face was topped by black, thick hair, and had bright eyes and a cheerful expression.
It's a black man,
she thought to herself.
But here, up this tree, what shall I do?
The black face looked down on the little girl, and then the man's lips parted in a smile. The head nodded amiably. Then a black finger came up from among the leaves and was put to the lips. "Don't you make a sound, little girl," said the man in a hoarse whisper. He sounded like an American. "Don't you say I'm here. I'm just a poor man, lost and alone." Lucy Ann couldn't believe her ears. She felt that she simply must call the others, but they didn't hear her, and as soon as she had shouted, the man frowned fiercely and shook his head. "Little gal, you gotta get away from here. It's a no-good mountain full of bad men. They'll get you if you don't get away. There's bad things here, little gal." Lucy Ann suddenly turned and ran back to the others. She ran fast and arrived absolutely out of breath.
"What's the matter? What's the matter?"
cried Jack, seeing from Lucy Ann's face that she'd had a shock. Lucy Ann could only gasp out one or two words. She pointed back to the stream.
"Black man!"
she gasped.
"Black! Black? That's what David said!"
cried Philip.
"Oh, get your breath, Lucy Ann. Tell us what you saw, quick!"
Lucy Ann panted out what she'd seen and heard. The others listened in astonishment.
"Come on, we'll ask him what he knows,"
cried Jack.
"There's something going on here. We'd better find out and then tell Bill when he comes. Quick!"
They all ran back to the stream and peered up the tree. But there was nobody there. The man had gone.
"Do you think he really meant there were men inside this mountain?"
asked Dinah, when they'd tired themselves out looking for the American.
"It seems incredible. But if you remember those noises of rumbling we heard yesterday, and the way the earth shook beneath us, it seems as if there might be men working underground,"
said Jack.
"What, as miners or something?"
asked Dinah.
"I don't know. Possibly. Though goodness knows what could be mined inside this mountain, or how they would get the machinery there. There would have to be a road, and then everyone would know. It's very mysterious,"
said Dinah. Lucy Ann sighed.
"It's another adventure, that's what it is. It's fatal to go off together like this. We go to look for birds or butterflies or something, and we always stumble into something peculiar. I'm getting tired of it." "Poor Lucy Ann,"
said Philip.
"We certainly do happen on strange things. I think it's very exciting. I love adventures."
They decided to go for a walk that evening. They would leave the donkey tied up to a tree by the stream with a note on his harness to say they would soon be back, just in case Bill came when they were away. They went off together, Kiki on Jack's shoulder. Then quite suddenly, a hullabaloo broke on their ears. It was the sound of excited barking and snarling, howling and yelping.
"The wolves!"
said Jack, straining his eyes to see where the noise came from.
"I say, they're after that man."
There came the crashing of bushes and twigs far away from them on the mountainside, accompanied by more howls and barks. Then the children caught sight of a man running across a bare, stony part of the mountainside about half a mile away. A pack of animals poured after him, but they weren't wolves, they were dogs. The children watched without a word, their hearts beating fast, anxious for the man to escape. They realized he was Lucy Ann's black man. He came to a tree and flung himself up it just as the first dog reached him. He pulled himself up and was lost to sight. The dogs surrounded the tree, clamoring loudly. Lucy Ann gulped. Tears ran down her face. She felt so sorry for the hunted man that she could hardly see through her tears. The others watched grimly. Then another man appeared, walking leisurely across the mountainside toward the tree and the dogs. On the crisp air of the mountain came the shrill sound of a whistle. The dogs at once left the tree and trotted back to the man. He stood not far off the tree and evidently gave orders for the man to come down. But nobody came down from the tree. so he turned to go back the way he came.
Oh, he's left the dogs to keep the poor man up the tree till he starves, or comes down to be set on,
sobbed Lucy Ann.
Philip, what shall we do? I'll go down and call the dogs off,
said Philip.
I'll give the man a chance to get right out of sight, so that he won't see me. Then I'll see if I can get the dogs away and give that chap a chance to escape from the tree.
Philip made his way cautiously through the tall bushes, and then something happened. A rough hand pounced down on his shoulder, and he was held in a grip like iron. Philip wriggled, but he couldn't possibly get away. He didn't dare to yell for the others, in case they got caught too. Blow! Why hadn't he waited longer before going off to the black man's rescue? "You'll come with me now," said the man. "You've seen too much." Just then there came a yelling and shouting from the tree. Evidently the runaway had given in. The man, still clutching Philip by the shoulder, went towards the tree. He took a whistle from his pocket, and the dogs at once left the tree and came to him. The poor man came down in such a hurry that he half fell. The procession of humans and dogs filed off up the mountain. From where Jack, Lucy Ann and Dinah watched in amazement, it looked as if they walked right inside the mountain. The children watched as Philip disappeared from sight. They decided that they had to follow straight away, even though it looked as if the mountain had mysteriously swallowed him up. They must rescue Philip. The children set out to find this mysterious entrance to the mountain. After a long walk, they thought they were at the spot where Philip had vanished. They reached it and looked up at the mountain. It towered up steep and sheer. Nobody could climb that.
"Now where were the others when they disappeared?"
said Jack.
"About here, I think."
He led the way to an uneven slab of rock. Hanging down in front of it, over the rocky wall, was a thick curtain of greenery, half bramble, half creepers of some kind, all matted together. The children thought this mass of green was actually growing on the wall, in the same way that many other little plants and ferns grew. It was only when the wind blew strongly and the curtain-like mass swung backwards and forwards a little that Lucy Ann guessed it wasn't growing out of the wall, it was hanging down, covering it. She caught hold of it. It swung back.
"Look,"
said Lucy Ann.
"this is a kind of curtain, Jack. And look at the big crack in the wall behind." "Gosh, yes. They must have all gone quickly behind this curtain of creepers,"
said Jack. All three passed easily behind the swinging curtain of creeper and bramble. They could slip through the crack without any trouble at all. Once through it, they found themselves in an immense cave. At the far end was an open passageway, leading into the heart of the mountain. They knew they had to follow it. So on they went, down the passage, into a vast hall-like cave, into another passage, and then, to their great surprise, they came to a most amazing place. It was like a vast laboratory, a workroom set in the heart of the mountain. It lay below them, and they had to lean over a little gallery to look at it.
"What is it?"
whispered Lucy Ann, awed at the amount of curious things there. There was no enormous machinery, only a vast network of gleaming wires, great glass jars standing together, crystal boxes in which sparks and flames shot up and down, and rows upon rows of silently spinning wheels that shone strangely as they spun. The wires ran from these all over the place. In the middle of the workroom shone a curious lamp. It had many sides, and it glowed first one colour and then another. Sometimes it was so dazzling that the children could hardly look at it. Sometimes it died down to a faint red, green, or blue glow. It seemed alive, a monster eye that watched over everything in that secret laboratory. The children gazed, fascinated. There was nobody there at all. Everything seemed to work on its own, never stopping. The wheels spun round, the wires gleamed, and nothing made any noise beyond a very quiet humming.
"What's going on, do you think?"
asked Dinah in awe.
"I haven't the least idea,"
said Jack.
But it's plain that it's something very secret, or they'd never do all this up here, in this lonely, inaccessible place. Atom bombs or something, do you think?
Asked Lucy Ann with a shiver.
Oh, no. You want enormous buildings for that,
said Jack.
No. It's something very odd and unusual, I should think. Let's go.
They wandered on and came to another extraordinary place. It was really only a high-roofed cave, but it was made into a great, sumptuous hall, with flights of steps leading up to what looked like a throne. Beautiful hangings hung down the walls from the roof, which glittered with shining lamps shaped like stars. The floor was laid with a golden carpet, and ranged on each side were beautiful chairs. The children stared in astonishment.
Whatever's all this?
Whispered Dinah.
Does some king live here? The king of the mountain?
They kept on going, deeper and deeper into the mountain. They came to some steps hewn out of the rock itself. These led upwards rather steeply in a spiral. They came to a door set fast in the side of the stone stairway. It was a stout wooden door with great bolts on the outside. Then the children's hearts jumped as they heard a familiar voice.
Who's there? Who's outside there? That's Philip,
said Jack. He knocked gently on the door.
Philip, it's us. We're going to undo the bolts of this door.
Philip's excited voice came through the door, eager and thrilled.
Gosh, Jack, is it really you? Can you let me out?
Jack shot the bolts back and opened the door.
Jack, how did you get here? The black man and I have been shut in this strange place. Look, there he is over there. He sleeps most of the time. He's the one the dogs were after.
Sure enough, there was the man, lying against the side of the cave, fast asleep.
Come on, let's go, Philip,
said Jack.
Don't let's waste a minute. We can tell each other everything when we're safely out of this extraordinary mountain.
They all went to the door, and then Jack pushed the others back quickly. He shut the door quietly and put a finger to his lips.
I can hear voices.
So could the others, loud voices that were coming nearer their door. Would the owners of the voices spot that the bolts were undone? The voices came nearer and nearer, and then passed. Evidently nobody had looked at the bolts of the door. The children breathed again.
Thank goodness. They've gone past,
said Jack.
Shall we wait for a few minutes and then run for it? No. Wait till the men come back,
said Philip.
I think they're only the paratroopers gone to the storeroom.
Everyone stared at him.
Paratroopers?
Said Jack in amazement.
What do you mean? Why should there be paratroopers here? This chap told me. His name's Sam,
said Philip, nodding towards the sleeping man.
Well, for goodness sake, tell us all about everything then,
said Jack, filled with intense curiosity.
Paratroopers? It sounds impossible.
Jack nodded towards the sleeping man.
What did he tell you? Oh, a lot of peculiar things,
said Philip.
He said he saw an advertisement in the paper asking for men who'd been paratroopers. You know, men who are trained to jump out of planes high in the air and parachute to Earth. Yes. Well, go on,
said Jack impatiently.
Well, the man who captured me, he goes by the name of Mayer, by the way, interviewed him at some office in Mexico and offered him a terrific sum of money if he'd come and try some new kind of parachute jumping. What kind?
Asked Dinah.
I don't exactly know. Sam sounded a bit muddled when he told me, or else I didn't understand him,
said Philip.
It's something to do with flying through the air on wings fixed to his arms. Apparently you can't possibly fall to earth when you've got these wings on, and you can guide yourself where and how you like, just as birds do. That's impossible,
said Jack at once.
Quite mad. Yes, that's why I think Sam got hold of the wrong idea,
said Philip.
Well, this fellow Mayer engaged a whole lot of ex-paratroopers, paid them fabulous sums, and brought them here in helicopters to the top of this mountain. And their job is to try out these wings, or so Sam says. Has he tried them?
Asked Jack.
No, but 3 of his mates have. They had these peculiar wings fitted to their arms and were given orders to jump from the helicopter at a given moment, or else be pushed out,
said Philip.
What happened?
Asked Jack.
Well, Sam doesn't know,
answered Philip.
You see, none of his mates came back. He's pretty certain they fell to their death. He didn't want to do the same, so he got away."
There was a long pause after this strange story. It was very hard to believe, and yet they had seen and heard such strange things the last few days that they felt anything might be true of this lonely mountain.
"Sam says there's a king,"
said Philip.
"The king of the mountain. Isn't it incredible? Sam's never seen him. He must be the spider at work, catching all these fellows and making them try out his mad experiments." "We thought there was some colossal brain behind all this,"
said Jack.
"I suppose that hawk-eyed man Mayor isn't the king, is he?" "Oh, no. I don't know what you'd call him, a sort of organiser, I suppose. He sees to everything, the stores, all the arrangements, shuts up the men when the helicopters arrive, and so on. There are 2 men, apparently, who work together on these things. The king is somebody who only appears on state occasions, such as when another pair of wings is produced, and the men have to go down to that great stateroom, listen to some speech they don't understand, and watch one of their number being picked to try out the wings." "Picking out a victim for sacrifice, it sounds like,"
said Jack grimly.
"I don't like this at all. It's so mad." "Look, Sam's waking up,"
said Lucy-Anne. They all looked at the man. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. He looked across the cave and seemed surprised to see so many children. Then he recognized Lucy-Anne as the little girl who'd seen him up in the tree. He smiled, and then shook his head.
"Didn't I tell you to get away?"
said Sam, looking solemn.
"This here is a bad mountain. Those men are bad, too."
"We're going now, Sam,"
said Philip.
"as soon as we think it's safe. Will you come too? We know the way out."
Sam looked frightened.
"I'm scared of those dogs," he said. "I reckon I'm safe right here."
They opened the door cautiously and went quietly down the spiral stairway, following its many turns round and round. They retraced their steps through to the throne room, but this time the throne room was not empty. It was full. Men stood there silently. There were all kinds, and a tough-looking lot they were. They were of many nationalities, but all were dressed in paratroopers' uniform. Besides the paratroopers there were guards, men who looked like soldiers, standing in an elaborate uniform down each side of the great hall. The throne was empty. There was no sign of the man, Mayor. But suddenly there came a whispering among the men gathered there. The great curtains near the throne were flung back by 2 soldiers, and the king of the mountain entered. He seemed very tall, for he had a great crown that stood up from his head, embroidered with glittering stones. He wore a rich suit and cloak, and looked more like an Indian prince at some splendid festival than anything else. His yellowish face looked out impassively from below his great crown, and a mass of black hair swung down on each side. He sat down on the throne. Beside him stood 2 men. Philip was sure that one was Mayor. He didn't know the other, but he didn't like the ape-like face and enormous burly figure. Mayor's hawk-like eyes swept the room. He began to speak in a penetrating, most incisive voice in a language that the children did not know. Then he paused and spoke in English. The children listened, spellbound. Mayor spoke of the king and the wonderful gift he was giving to mankind, the gift of flying. He spoke of the grand men who were helping them in their experiment, the paratroopers willing to try the wings. He spoke of the great wealth the men would receive, the honours that would be piled on them. Then he said it all again in a 3rd language, and then in a 4th. He seemed to hypnotize everyone as he spoke. Jack could not help feeling that a lot he said was sheer nonsense, but he couldn't do anything but believe it whilst he heard it, and it was obvious that all the men there drank every word in, whether it was spoken in their own language or not. What a spellbinder, thought Jack. Then volunteers were called for. All the men stepped forward at once. The king then rose and, apparently at random, picked out 2 or 3. He spoke a few inaudible words in an unexpectedly thin, reedy voice that didn't seem to go at all with his kingly presence. Then Mayor took charge again. He said that these men, among the first to fly with wings, would be sent back to their own countries after the experiment with wealth enough to last them for a lifetime. All the others who had tried out the wings were now safely back in their homes and were rich and honoured men.
I don't think,
muttered Jack to Philip, remembering what Sam had related. The king then walked majestically out, and Mayor and the other man followed. The guards ushered the paratroopers away, and soon the great throne room was empty. When everyone had gone, there was complete silence. Jack whispered to Philip,
"We know the way out from here. Come on."
The children just reached the exit to the throne room when something disastrous happened. 2 huge guards appeared. They were caught. The 4 children were marched out of the room and taken to the hawk-like man, Mayor. Lucy Ann was sobbing. Dinah looked very pale, and the boys were angry and defiant. Mayor was glowering, and his piercing eyes glanced from one child to another sharply. "So, there are 4 of you. 3 of you came to find this boy, I suppose, and let him out of the cave he was in. You thought you could all escape." Nobody said a word. Mayor's eyes began to narrow, and the girls felt uneasy. He was horrid. "Does anyone else know of that entrance?" asked Mayor suddenly.
"How do we know?"
said Philip.
"What does it matter if they do? Is what you're doing here so shameful that you need to hide even the entrance to the mountain?"
Mayor stepped forward and slapped Philip across the face. Lucy Ann stopped crying in greater fright than ever. Philip did not flinch. He looked the man boldly in the face, and did not even rub his smarting cheek. "If you do have friends anywhere near," said Mayor, "the dogs will find them and bring them in." The children's hearts sank. Would the Alsatians capture Bill and David then, and bring them to the mountain to make them prisoners too? That would be dreadful. The children were forced to walk out of the cave. They soon found themselves stumbling up the stone spiral stairs, going up, and then, what a surprise! They came up a broad flight of steps hewn out of the rock onto the very top of the mountain itself. They stood there, catching their breath at the sight of the amazing panoramic view all round them. The top of the world! Surely they must be touching the sky itself. They forgot their troubles for a moment as they gazed round in wonder. Everywhere they looked were mountains rising high. Valleys, deep in shadow, lay far, far below. It was wonderful to be up there in the blazing sunshine and cool breeze after being in the dark mountain for so long. The top of the mountain was extraordinarily flat. On 3 sides rose steep rocks like teeth. Nothing grew there at all. It was bare, flat rock, the size of a great courtyard. At one side, playing cards in the shade, were the paratroopers. They stared in surprise at the children. Runaway Sam was with them, and he pointed to them and was evidently telling his companions about them. There was an awning rigged up on the side opposite the paratroopers. Mayor pushed the children towards it. "You will stay here," he said. "You will not talk to those men over there at all. You will not go near them. You are prisoners, you understand? You have forced your way in here, where you are not wanted, and now we shall keep you here as long as we wish." Suddenly, they heard a noise far away in the distance. They knew what it was. A helicopter. Was it coming to the mountain? The noise came nearer and at last sounded very loud.
"Look, there it is,"
said Jack, excited.
"See, going round the mountain a bit above us."
The helicopter came down to the courtyard and stopped. The vanes ceased to whirl above it. Voices hailed one another. The children could see what was going on quite clearly. Boxes and crates were being tumbled out of it onto the ground, and the hard-working men were all very busy handling them, dragging them about, opening some of them and taking the contents down the stone steps to the store places. They couldn't get a good look at the pilot, who kept his face covered by the brim of his hat. Mayor came out and talked to the pilot, and one of the paratroopers appeared.
"I believe that paratrooper is the next one to try those wings. They've brought him up to show him the helicopter and where he's to jump from,"
said Philip. Both the girls thought it would be dreadful to have to leap from a machine high up in the air and trust to the king's extraordinary wings. They wondered how many people had tried them and failed. Nobody would know if they were efficient or not until they'd been tried. The paratrooper looked the helicopter over thoroughly. He talked to the pilot, who answered him shortly. Jack thought that the pilot wasn't any too keen about the para-jumping part. He would probably have been content to fly the goods to the mountains and finish at that. Then from the opening, stepping out majestically, came the king. He was dressed in his grand robes and crown. He held himself proudly as he walked to the centre of the courtyard. Behind came 4 uniformed guards carrying a box. They laid it down at the king's feet. In silence, he stooped down and opened it. He took out a pair of wings. They glittered like gold and were shaped like a bird's outstretched wings, big and wide. Lucy Ann gasped in delight.
Oh, look, Dinah, real wings! Aren't they lovely?
The king was speaking to the amazed paratrooper. "These will hold you up when you jump. Press this button here as soon as you leap from the helicopter. Then you will find that you cannot fall. You will no longer feel the pull of the earth. You will be free and light as air. Then you may use the wings for guiding yourself, for planing, for soaring, whatever you wish." "Here, is this all I'm going to have to stop me from falling?" said the paratrooper. "You will not need anything else," said the king. "In these wings are imprisoned powerful rays. At the press of the button they are released and shoot towards the earth, preventing its pull on you. You cannot fall. But when you want to come to earth, press the button once more, and you will glide down gently, as the earth exerts her pull on you once more." "Yes, but look here, I understood it was a new kind of parachute I was trying out," said the paratrooper. "See, I didn't think it was stuff and nonsense like this."
"It is not nonsense, man," said Mayer's curt voice. "It is a great invention by the greatest scientist in the world."
"Oh, look here, I'm a heavy chap," began the paratrooper again. "See, those flimsy wings won't hold me, rays or no rays. I don't know about any pull of the earth on me. All I know is I'll have to fall once I jump out with only those things on my arms. Are you crazy?"
"Get him,"
said Mayer suddenly in a furious voice. The soldiers at once pinioned the paratrooper's arms. He had to stand whilst the king fixed on the wings. The children watched with bated breath. But the pilot now had something to say. He spoke in a drawling voice, clear and contemptuous. "I think this fellow's too heavy. You better think again, boss, and get those wings made twice the size. I'm game for an experiment when there's a chance for everybody, but I reckon there's not much chance for a big fellow trying out those wings of yours."
"Do you mean you refuse to take this fellow?" said Mayer, white with anger. "You're a new man, aren't you?"
"You've got it right first time, boss," said the pilot, getting angry too. "Try a little fellow." Mayer went up to the pilot as if he meant to strike him. "That's right," said the pilot, who had not turned a hair. "Don't try any funny business with me, boss. I know too much, and there's others will know too much too, if I don't get back on time." He got into his machine. The pilot leaned forward and spoke again to Mayer, who looked as if he was on the point of bursting with rage. "If you want someone to try out these wings for you, why don't you use those kids? They'd be light enough, and who'd miss them if it didn't work?" The children were horrified when they heard this. How could the pilot be so cruel? And then the children heard a few words that made them gasp in horror.
"Okay, those kids will do," said Mayer. "We'll put the wings on them, and they'll jump from the helicopter."
Lucy Ann began to cry bitterly. Jack, Philip, and Dinah put their arms round her. They felt like howling too.
"He doesn't mean it,"
said Jack, trying to think of something really comforting.
"Don't worry. He only said that to scare us. They'd never make us do a thing like that." They didn't say it to scare us. They meant it. You know they did,"
sobbed Lucy Ann.
"What are we going to do? We've got to do something."
"You will be paid very, very well," said Mayer to the pilot. "This time it'll be double the price because of our young jumpers."
"Right," said the pilot. "I must be off. Get these kids and make them ready." Lucy Ann's knees were shaking so much that she couldn't stand. Philip felt calm, but rather fierce. The pilot had not seen any of the children, but now Philip had to go forward, fetched by one of the soldiers. The others followed, though Lucy Ann had to hold on to Jack. Before the pilot could say a word to them, the king appeared again. The box with more wings in was carried by one of the soldiers. The king undid it and took them out. They really did look beautiful, and what was more, they looked as if they would be able to fly. Lucy Ann hoped fervently that they could. Lucy Ann gave a sob. This was too much for her altogether. The pilot said nothing, but sat in the helicopter. The king showed no hesitation at all in letting the children go. Maya watched grimly as the children, now wearing their wings, climbed into the helicopter. They had to be helped by one of the soldiers, for their arms were so heavy with the beautiful wings. Maya did not admire their pluck in the least. Philip looked back at him mockingly.
"So long,"
he said, and raised one of his winged arms.
"See you later. Look out for yourself, Maya. You'll come to a bad end one of these days."
Maya stepped forward angrily, but the helicopter's engine began to whir. The rotors went slowly round, gathering speed. Lucy Ann tried to stifle a sob. Dinah hugged her. The two boys were silent. The helicopter rose straight up into the air and flew at gathering speed away from the mountain. And then the four terrified children saw something that made their hearts leap. The pilot turned his head to them, and they saw his face for the first time. It was Bill.
"Oh, Bill, this is grand. How did you—"
they all began. "All explanations later," said Bill, and concentrated on steering the helicopter away from the strange mountain as fast as he could. The children were absolutely amazed by him. Good old Bill, he always came through. Once the helicopter was on a straight course, and the mountain was getting smaller and smaller behind them, Bill was able to listen to their story. The children told him all their adventures down to the last detail. Bill had marvelled at their accidental discovery of the strange mountain and its even stranger secret.
"I shall take my wings back to school with me next term,"
Philip said.
"Won't the boys stare? I bet some of them will want to try them."
"Well, all I can say is I should discourage anyone from jumping off the school roof or anything like that and trusting to these wings," said Bill dryly.
"What are you going to do about everything?"
asked Jack. "Well, the paratroopers will be sent back home. The soldiers will be questioned and also sent back. I've a feeling there's something strange about them, too. The king will be taken into safety," said Bill. "I shall send 2 or 3 scientists to the mountain to let them report on what they find there. I shouldn't be surprised if they advise us to destroy everything in it. It sounds like the king has been meddling with dangerous things. With no one there to keep a guiding hand on them, there might be a vast explosion."
"It's a good thing we discovered it, isn't it?"
said Lucy Ann. "A very good thing," said Bill. "And it's an even better thing you left that note with the donkey. If it hadn't been for that, I'd never have found you."
"What happened?"
asked Jack. "I came along to find you, complete with donkeys, after David's rush home," said Bill. "Instead, I found only the donkey and the note, which talked of very peculiar things indeed, and made me smell a very large rat."
"Go on,"
said Philip, interested. "Well, I snooped round but couldn't find my way in through the roofless cave," said Bill. "So the only thing to do was to start finding out about helicopters. If somebody could land on that mountain top, then so could I."
"Good old Bill,"
said Jack. "And then," said Bill, "I found when I began making inquiries about all the helicopters in this country, who owned them and so on, that other people were also making inquiries about a few of them. Some of the helicopters had been flying off in suspicious circumstances. Nobody knew where. So the police were even then inquiring into the matter, and I joined them hotfoot."
"And what did you find?"
asked Dinah. "I found a young pilot who'd just returned from the mountain," said Bill. "The police had a word with him, and he spilt the beans, as we say. Told us he was worried about paratroopers jumping without proper parachutes and so on. And so I took his place on the next helicopter trip, and hey presto, there I was, on top of the mountain."
"Oh, Bill, it was heavenly to see you,"
said Lucy Ann. They got back to the farmhouse, By dinner time, Mrs. Mannering ran out in joy. She had been very worried indeed. Mrs. Evans followed.
Indeed to goodness, it's grand to see you, whatever. Oh, to think what you've been through, look you. As much danger as in wartime. Oh, it's glad we are to see you back.
It's well they're looking too, said Evans in his up-and-down voice, beaming. And that bird, indeed she's funnier than ever.
Whatever, look you,
mimicked Kiki, also in a sing-song voice, and Evans went off into guffaws, imitated by Kiki. The two of them sounded so jolly that everyone else began to laugh too. Mrs. Evans, of course, had got another lovely meal ready for them all. What a lot there was to tell! Mrs. Evans' eyes nearly fell out of her head as she listened and handed out food of all kinds to everyone. Bill was to stay until 2 or 3 scientists arrived to go with him to the mountain. Some police officers were to accompany them too, to round up the soldiers, though Bill did not expect any trouble from them at all. They probably had bad records, and had signed on with Mayer to keep out of the way of the police for a while and to earn money.
Can we go to the mountain too?
Asked Jack hopefully.
You might lose your way inside, Bill.
Oh, no, I shan't, said Bill. I found a nice little map of the inside of the mountain in the helicopter. I shan't lose my way, and you may as well give up all hope of coming with me, because you've been in quite enough danger these holidays. I'm afraid if I took you with me, another adventure might blow up. I never saw such children for smelling out adventures.